Board of Education acknowledges that we are on the traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. We would like to thank them for the privilege of living on their land and the gift of working with their children. Adoption of the agenda. And I have one addition to it, a motion from Trustee Caton.
I'd like to move the adoption of the agenda with my addition, but just for clarification, Chair Hargraves, Trustee McDonald sent an email this afternoon wanting her motions being put on there, but I guess we're going to have to wait until she joins us before we can accept that. Am I correct?
That's right. Okay. That's my understanding of it, why I referenced you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's that the Board of Education adopt the agenda with the addition for the August 2020 regular board meeting agenda as presented with those additions. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Trustee Howe. All those in favor? Passed. The board meeting minutes from June 23rd, 2020. Do I have a mover for the recommendation that the Board of Education adopt the June 23rd, 2020 regular board meeting minutes as presented?
I'll move it.
Thank you, and seconded by Trustee Howe. Okay, on to, as was mentioned, and I'll just, from the time that the Minister of Education and the Provincial Health Officer announced on July 29th, the intention to return to students to school in September, and to start the year in stage 2 of the 5-stage framework for K-12 education, the board office, senior staff, and trustees have received many questions regarding the district's restart plans. And it is fully expected that we will receive many more tonight and in the days to come. We are currently taking all inquiries, so any questions from tonight as well, and compiling all COVID-19 restart requests to develop a new list of frequently asked questions. We will post and share all responses and will answer all of these questions on our district website in the days to come. They will be found, or can be found, at the district website under the COVID-19 banner button. We would strongly recommend that you review the available documentation shared online, as many of your questions have already been addressed in the information available on the district's COVID-19 update webpage and on the the Ministry of Education's Return to School website, which can be found at www.governmentbc.ca under K-12 COVID-19 Return to School. Those links will also likely be on our webpage as well. Updated webpage on the school district and the website. On August 26th, the Board of Education will release the Return to School Framework Plan for Comox Valley Schools, along with each of the respective schools posting details of their specific plan on their school websites at that date, on that date. And at this time then, moving through our agenda, there are no presentations. There was no education committee, so I will go to the strategic direction, and I will turn it over at this time to our superintendent to discuss September school restart plan.
Thank you, Chair Hargraves, and thank you very much. Before we begin, I just want to preface that this is a really unusual way of delivering this plan, in that it was not sent to trustees with a great amount of time, as we were still dotting the I's on the plan up until about 4 o'clock this afternoon. And a lot of big reason for that is the short time frame that we had to engage in some discussion and consultation with all our partners, having our schools do a lot of work behind the scenes, our operations department, and being able to turn it in. The plan itself contains the following areas: a section on health and safety, a section dealing with the operations, the learning cohorts, and we've broken them up in terms of elementary program and secondary, and that is what is the plan moving forward. Our student services, or students with diverse needs, communication plan, and then the end of it is a wrap up of the consultation that we've incurred with our Indigenous Education Council, our unions, and our parents as well. It's been a long process in a short amount of time, and I just want to thank all those who've spent hours and hours working on this to this point. The plan that we will be sharing with you tonight is a very high level plan. Obviously, with schools not being in, it's been difficult to get into the fine details of it. What you'll hear tonight is the big picture of what the plan will be, and what we're required to submit to the ministry is that big picture. From here, once this is done, our plan is to be submitted to the ministry. And then from the submission, which will occur tomorrow afternoon, once it's been approved by the ministry, it comes back where it'll go to our schools, who will continue to refine it and work it in details. They will post on the 26th the plans to date, and moving forward, continue to update those posts as there changes. A plan of this nature is going to require some wholesale changes in some of our levels, and in others, modifications to how processes occur. So tweaks to this plan will be occurring throughout the next little while. One of the things that is not part of the plan, but we will be looking for direction, is the notion that we have all received requests from parents regarding indicating that they may want to try an option, a distance learning option, or perhaps a homeschool type option. And the question that we've received is regarding retaining their spot. And so we will be asking the board, and I believe Trustee Caton has put a motion forward that we can look at and have a discussion around afterwards. That is not part of the plan per se. However, that item may help parents inform their decision moving forward. Mr. Chair, is it okay if I take a question from trustees? Trustee Wade?
Thank you. Superintendent DeMayo, I'm wondering if you and the senior team have a recommendation regarding that overwhelming requests that you've been receiving and we've been receiving regarding options in terms of this school year.
Sure. Yeah, we can share that. Would trustees like to hear the sort of our recommendation around that at this point, or would you like me to go through the plan first and then that at the end? And I'm open to either. I think we can share that now because it's not part. Trustee Howe?
Yeah, sorry, that was going to be my request. If you just let us know your recommendation now, it might alleviate some curiosities.
Sure, not a problem. So the issue is such. There's a lot of mixed emotions and anxieties around returning for many families, and wondering, they still haven't made their mind up if they're prepared to come back to a full face-to-face instructional program, and many are looking at perhaps a distance learning type of model or some other type of accommodation. The question that's being asked, and I think people can appreciate, with a growing district we've had, and just this past spring going through a process where we actually had some boundary consultations because some of our sites were experiencing growth. The question that's come out is, should a family choose to either explore a DL option or an alternate option versus face-to-face, will their spot be retained at that school for the following year? And that was the request that had been made on numerous occasions. Based on the information we have and the direction we've seen, our recommendation is that families should not be penalized because of the pandemic situation that we are in. And we really feel that it's a tough choice for families to make that decision. And if families were to choose that, I think holding that spot would not necessarily be a bad thing, and we would support that. Now, what that will mean for us is that obviously we have new students moving in. We continue to grow as a district. So we will have to work extremely hard with our school communities and our schools to find placement for students. I think open and transparent communication with everyone moving forward, if we can accommodate students off our wait list to come into those spots, great, with an understanding that we potentially have students coming back. So our recommendation at this point would be that we allow those students to explore a DL option for the year and still retain their spot in that school. Trustee Caton, I know you had a question.
So I wasn't aware of that recommendation before this evening, so which is why I brought forth the motion that I brought forth, which actually covers exactly what you were saying. So I'm wondering if that does not, your recommendation kind of supersedes that motion, or we can continue forward, because I just don't want us to vote on your recommendation and then my motion is actually very similar to the same thing because I wasn't aware of that recommendation.
No,
Direction.
Yeah, it would be a direction from the board. So your motion, Trustee Caton, would come into play, because we're just saying that our recommendation as a senior team, after having discussed this would be it. However, it would have to come in a motion from a board. So if it's similar to your motion, Trustee Caton, I do believe that would have to come in place. Trustee Wade?
Sorry if I confuse things for everybody right near the start. I'd be pleased to listen to the entire presentation before we move to a point of motions, but through the board chair, you know, maybe asking questions before the presentation is over isn't helpful. So I'll refrain from any more of my questions and I'll save them to the end. And then I'm hoping we have the opportunity for questions and then move forward with the motions.
Thank you, Trustee Waite. And yeah, we will make time for the questions, definitely.
So thank you. So moving forward, so that's an aside. It isn't part of our plan that we do submit, but I do feel that trustees need to understand that has been something that we've had to consider, and we've obviously discussed it as a senior team. So what we'll do now is we'll walk you through the components of the plan. After each of the section, and we've got a variety of senior leaders that will be presenting today. After each of the section, we'll have an opportunity for questions from trustees around that particular section, and questions can go through the chair for that, and then answer, and then we'll work our way through, and then I will conclude it at the end with some statements regarding sort of our next steps and where we have to proceed. So the first thing I'd like to do is to introduce our Director of Instruction, Health and Safety, Mr. Paul Berry, who will talk a little bit about our requirements in health and safety and what's changed since our documentation in June and where we're at in preparation for September. So Director Berry?
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to start by saying that the physical and emotional health and safety of our students and staff is really our school district's most important work. This is an area in which we excel, and we have a long-standing tradition of excellence in both health and safety and emergency management. Due to this, we were really well positioned to respond to the pandemic. We had a strong pandemic plan already in place. And in addition, we were fortunate to have our new manager of health and safety, Russell Roy, come to us from the healthcare sector, where clean, safe, and virus-free environments was really his mandate. And his expertise has helped us significantly prepare for this opening in September. Our protocols for the last spring, or successful opening last spring, and those protocols were widely distributed across the province and were shared via a webinar in late June with school districts across North America, and are now really foundational to the COVID-19 staff training modules prepared by Hour Zero for distribution across hundreds of school divisions in BC, Alberta, Quebec, and California. As we look to welcoming students back to the Comox Valley this September, we are doing so at a time when we know that COVID-19 cases are on the rise in BC. We recognize this reality, and we recognize the anxiety that that is creating for families, for staff. Fortunately, we live on Vancouver Island, and together we can celebrate that we have done a very good job at keeping the transmission of COVID-19 to very, very low levels. As of yesterday, we had no one hospitalized for treatment of COVID-19 on Vancouver Island, 4 active cases, and significant active testing with a positivity rate of less than 1%. To date, there has not been a single recorded case of anyone under the age of 19 contracting COVID-19 since the pandemic began in BC. With this as context, our public health leaders and WorkSafe BC are clear that our schools are low-risk environments for transmission of the virus. Despite this, we're taking every precaution, and we're taking the pandemic very seriously, and have developed a strong set of protocols and strong operational measures to keep everyone safe as we open our schools. From an emergency management perspective, the reopening of schools signals a return to some level of normalcy and stability in our communities. Given this, we have the duty to get this right for everyone and for our community. We don't want to go backwards. To ensure that we move forward, we developed a comprehensive set of protocols based upon the recommendations of the BC Centre for Disease Control, WorkSafe BC, and the Ministry of Education, and in close consultation with both our provincial and local health officers. All of the documents, as was mentioned before, are available to the public and to all staff. They are available on our district webpage under the big orange COVID information banner. All staff have already received a copy of our protocols, and the site joint occupational health and safety committees will be helping to train all of our staff on how to operationalize the protocols within each work site over the next couple of weeks. As Tom said, the document is a living document, and it's under constant review to ensure its accuracy. The protocol itself is a 40-page document. I'm not going to cover all 40 pages tonight, but it is built upon 7 foundational principles. Those principles being, first of all, and I reiterate this, that children are low risk. Children, fortunately, are not impacted very much by COVID-19, and if they are infected, it's a mild course of illness. In addition, they are not efficient transmitters of the disease, and we have significant studies that have borne this out, both within Canada and internationally. Our second foundational principle is around clean schools, and our operations staff have worked very hard to ensure that our schools will be clean prior to the beginning of operations throughout each day. And we're asking all staff to do their part to ensure that their workplaces are maintained in a clean state throughout the day. Healthy occupants is the third foundational principle. And to this end, we're asking that everyone do their part. Families, staff members, any visitors to the school, to ensure that they have reviewed the health check questions on a daily basis, and that they are not coming into our schools if they are symptomatic in any way whatsoever. In addition, we have procedures and protocols in the event that we have a student or staff member ill during school operations, and an effective way to get them home safely and to ensure that they're well taken care of. Physical distancing is the fourth foundational principle that we in our communities, in our grocery stores, everywhere have been practicing, and it's important within the schools as well. It's important for students and it's important for staff. And how physical distancing will take place from kindergarten to grade 12 is identified and detailed throughout the protocol. Cohorts is a significant change in the protocol from what we received in June. Cohorts are designed to be self-encapsulated groups of students who stay together and move together throughout the course of their day and week to ensure that we're keeping learning groups small, and so that we can trace in the event that anyone does become ill during their time at school. Training and education is a large part of this protocol, and it is our expectation that every staff member will review the protocol and complete a knowledge test to show that they have understood the protocol. In addition, we're leaning heavily on our joint site occupational health and safety committees to help orient all staff to the schools, whether they be on-call staff or regular staff, so that they're aware of how they can keep themselves safe and what the protocols are within their particular buildings. As I said, the protocol itself spans some 40 pages and covers everything from how to maintain equipment within the school, all of the cleaning procedures and cleaning materials that we use within the schools, how we isolate people in the event of illness, our classroom environments. And I know Director Hesselgrave is going to talk particularly about the more operational components of this plan and how they will be brought to life within the school. The protocol speaks to how we report to public health in the event of any illness. There are a series of appendices in this 40 pages, and probably the one that trustees would be most interested in, as would be the public, is a section, or Appendix D, which is called 50 Ways to Beat COVID-19. This document has been produced as a series of items with explanatory notes to explain the protocol in simple terms and to guide staffs as they work through ensuring that they have met all the components of the protocol. So it would have simple questions like, are all staff aware that only staff and students are allowed in the school? It shows an image of the signage that would be placed on the front of a school to indicate that anyone visiting the school who is not a staff member would need to check in or have prior permission to enter the school. It speaks to the roles of the joint health committees, talks to the use of face masks, about our bus protocols. So if there is any question that anyone has, whether it be a staff member, a trustee, a member of senior management, or a member of the public, they can look to this, this document to address many of the questions that we know that you all have.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
If no one minds, because I haven't got all trustees on the screen, can I just go with one screen and I'll switch to the other to get everybody? So I'll ask you by name. Trustee Howe, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we have, we're going to go through a lot of material tonight, so I don't want to slow down the process, but I just want to ensure that the document that's on the website clearly defines what would happen in case there was someone who was identified as positive for COVID there, so parents could find that. I just want to make sure that that's there, so everyone on the call here today is aware of that.
Yes, the document does speak to that, and we have had significant conversations with public health about how they would engage in the event that we had anyone symptomatic, and all of the precautions and all the measures that we would need need to take in that event.
Perfect, thank you.
Trustee Waite, do you have a question at this time? I'll return to you if you don't, but thank you. Okay. Trustee Caton, do you have a question?
Just a quick one. We all know how the only thing with this pandemic is change itself, and change is regular. From Monday to Tuesday, Wednesday to Thursday, something could happen. And I haven't had really a chance to read the document because I was working today. So my question to you, I guess, Paul and the staff, is the ability to quickly change or adapt to the new regulations and guidelines that either will come from the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Education. And this is a flexible document. We're not bound by it, and it can be adjusted accordingly to whatever requirements Dr. Henry comes out or the Minister Fleming addresses, that we're capable of just doing that quick change, and the communication will be done right away. Am I correct in understanding that?
That would be absolutely correct.
Trustee Hawksby, do you have anything? Trustee Frowley? Trustee McDonald? You're now, yes.
Yeah, just so much appreciation for the detail in the protocols and in the summary. And I left a couple of housekeeping notes on the chat if someone checks them later.
Okay, thanks.
You're muted, Trustee Hargreaves.
Thank you. Thank you. And I return. Trustee Waite, did you have anything after?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. On we go.
Thank you.
Superintendent.
I'd like to now ask Director Hesselgrave, Director of Operations, to discuss the work that's been going on behind the scenes regarding the custodial preparedness and everything from hand washing to hand stations, cleaning stations, to busing to ventilation, and particularly he was share some information around ventilation and busing. So Director Hesselgrave, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, Mr. DeMeo. The operations department, we've had a busy summer. The decision was made early on in the summer that we had 5 focus points, and I want to address those just in turn rather quickly. There's lots of information that that is captured in the protocol and other means, and happy to provide any further information. But really, number one, our area of our focus was on the protocols, is that we work collaboratively as a team to make sure that our protocols reflected BC CDC policy and Ministry of Education direction. And as Mr. Barry said, the lion's share of the work was completed by the Manager of Health and Safety. And I think one of the really good changes is that, Trustee Caton touched on this, is that anything that is new has been highlighted in the document because it's a very extensive document, and that 50 ways to beat COVID is a really good primer for everybody. And it's only 3 pages as opposed to 45. So the protocols were number one. Number two for us was hand washing stations. Appreciated early on that, several of the keys to beating this were ensuring that that everybody has clean hands. So we started a project in June to identify every sink in every school. So we have floor plans that have pink dots on them showing every single sink. And what we are trying to do is ensure that at the elementary level, there's equivalent of 1 sink per classroom. Because of the different vintages and build types of the schools, sometimes there isn't really a normal distribution of sinks, and we're trying to ensure that there's lots of them available, particularly in entrances and hallways, so that it's easy to keep clean hands. So we have, we've been converting all of our water fountains. So the bubblers, as we call them, where you push the button and you get a little flow of water, we've actually capped all those off and converted them to bottle filling stations. So we really need kids to bring their bottles to school. Every sink that is in a classroom, but now we're ensuring as well that there's proper soap and paper towel. Hallway sinks have been added. So this job, it's involved 2 plumbers and several weeks of work. And we're going to have the first run through done by the 31st of August. And then our intent is to work with the principals. Once we've had kids back and teachers back to see where the other issues are, we did get some money from the ministry, which was very welcome. So we'll order more sinks, and the schools will look fundamentally different in the entrances and throughout. So number 3 for us on the hit list was ventilation improvements. There's been lots in the news, social media and other venues around ventilation and how important that is. So we really took that on this summer. So we've changed every HVAC filter in the district, and that is hundreds and hundreds of filters. And we've bumped our schedule so that we'll do a filter change twice a year. HVAC controls are a second part. And so we've done a full reprogram. We're not completely finished, but we'll be finished in time for school start. And what we're trying to do is follow the best science and engineering information available. So we're following the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning. And that's kind of the worldwide gold standard for HVAC protocols. One of the things we have found, I've done a lot of reading through these kind of periodicals, is that there's a bit of inconsistency around how it should be addressed, but where there is full agreement is introducing as much fresh air as possible. So the way we're reprogramming is we're starting each day with a school flush. So that means running fresh air through the school for 2 hours prior to occupancy. We're also increasing airflow into classrooms. So every classroom has an air damper that allows air in through the heating system. And we're going to be increasing the openings on them, and we're going to make it independent of the time of year because they're generally keyed to the weather. We're also lowering the CO2 sensors. So the CO2 sensors that are built into our system, that's the trigger for pulling in increased fresh air when it hits a certain level. Often, there's a balance there about a school the energy efficiency and our CO2 levels and comfort levels. So we are pulling the CO2 sensor levels down, which again means we'll be pulling a lot more fresh air into the schools. We're also increasing the runtime of occupancy sensors. So when kids leave a classroom for any break period, typically that's a point where we have it programmed so that the heating and cooling system shuts down. So right now we're going to leave the runtime for those occupancy sensors much longer, which means we'll introduce, again, a lot more air into the rooms. And air handling systems that are variable speed are kind of a major innovation in energy efficiency. In a gym where you need to pull a lot of air in, normally those systems run at 30 to 50%, and we're bumping it up to almost 100%. So again, more air in. One of the downsides of all these changes is certainly our energy efficiency. There's always a balance in your HVAC between our good creature comfort and then having a high level of energy efficiency. So we're definitely going to be using more fuel throughout this winter. The other thing we've done on the ventilation improvement side is we're changing our maintenance procedures and we're improving our system monitoring. So I think that will be definitely well in hand for the beginning of beginning of September. The fourth point for us was physical changes in supplies. There was a lot of supply chain issues through March, April, May, and June. And then the flow started to improve. So we have been making significant purchases of material and cleaning supplies so that we have a really good stockpile. And we're going to be outfitting every classroom with a set of cleaning supplies, so cloths and bottles. They're all labeled, they're all age appropriate, and we have really good guidelines for who can use certain kinds of cleaning products and what kind of supervision is required. We have some that are only used by custodians, which are sort of locked up in the school, and others that are available essentially for anybody. The other thing on the physical changes to schools is we're putting in more Lexan barriers. I think as the lessons of June that came from staff were good, and we've received a number of requests to put up some additional barriers. And we'll have those done, and creating portable ones as well, so we have some flexibility. Hallway signage is also really important. So we have the print shop has done just superb work in developing some standardized floor signs to keep everybody going in the right direction. And those will be delivered to all the schools by midweek next week. And we're allowing the school health and safety committees and the admin staff to to work together to get the flow into the school right. And I think the last big thing for the operations department really is around busing. And when we did the busing in June, there really weren't very many kids going to school. So we did not have any challenges with the load on the buses or how we were managing them. We appreciate things are going to change with a full return. So we've worked really closely with First Student. We've worked with some provincial transportation bodies, and we have some good protocols, I believe, in place. So again, hand cleanliness, so hand sanitizing, kids to wash or sanitize their hands before they leave home. We're asking for a student to install hand sanitizer dispenser in the doorway of every bus. So in each bus will be cleaned and disinfected prior to kids occupying, so that's twice a day minimum. Physically distancing on buses. If the space is available, we're one child per seat, unless they're in the same family, and staggered seating. We appreciate that some routes are extremely full, and that they won't have as many kids, but there'll be times when physical distancing on buses is difficult. Masks are going to be mandatory for students that are 11 years old and up, and younger students, we're encouraging them to wear masks as well. The other big piece of testing we did on buses was ventilation, because we know how important the ventilation is. So we've worked with First Student, our health and safety manager, and we did smoke testing and ventilation testing and particulate measuring on all our buses, given different configurations and operating modes. And what we've determined is that with good natural ventilation, so every other window partly down, the roof hatch cracked open, and the mechanical ventilation system on the bus, we have really good dispersal and ventilation levels that have been measured. So we have directed First Student there to operate the buses at all times with the windows open and the mechanical ventilation on. So we're going to be asking and advising our families that they need to dress for the weather, because it'll get a little blowy in the bus in November for sure. So those are really key areas for us. Very busy summer. Some of this work will be carrying on right till that first week of September, but we think we have made some significant and meaningful changes in our schools.
Okay, I'll do the question asking again in the same way. Trustee Waite, do you have any? Okay, Trustee Howe? Any questions? Okay. Trustee Caton, any questions? Trustee McDonald?
Just going back over that question about the physical distancing on the buses, where it says if space is available. So if a particular route has a certain number of students and there just isn't space, then we just say, oh, well, or are there I mean, I realize too, because a number of parents haven't actually made their minds or committed that it, you'd have a hard time figuring out which students are on which buses, but would there be times when we might run two buses on a route because of the numbers, or rather than have every seat taken? And then on the high school, would there be half-day buses in some cases?
Well, I'll address the second question first. So if our school schedule changes, we'll adapt our busing to schedule changes. In terms of additional buses, we're unable to acquire more buses for student transportation. We can look at some places doing double runs depending on the length of the run, but we are hoping to achieve our physical distancing in a couple of means. And certainly part of it is going to be attempting to have assigned seating for students in buses, because you get a cluster. Even if the bus is half full, everyone wants to sit at the back. So we're gonna work with the drivers and space the kids out. But that there is a tough reality for us around loads on buses and how we're able to manage that. So we're really encouraged by our ventilation testing results when we do go with the windows open, and masks are very helpful as well. So protocol we followed in the maintenance department when we have to double up on vehicles, we have windows open and masks on for all all occupants of the vehicle if it's more than one. And that's the path we're going on now, and the direction we have from BC CDC and the ministry.
Trustee Frawley, Trustee Hawksby. Thank you very much. Back to you, Superintendent DeMayo.
Thank you, Director Hasselgrave. So now comes the part of learning cohorts, and we've divided this up into elementary and secondary, and I'd like to invite Director Alan Douglas, Director of Instruction, to speak a little bit about the elementary overarching plans.
Thank you, Superintendent DeMayo, and good evening, everyone. And I hope you can see as we welcome children back to school to another great school year, our number one concern is always the health and safety of our students and our staff. As Mr. Barry said, we've asked all schools to develop a health and safety plan, go over the protocols with their staff, do an orientation, and that was the purpose of the September 8th and 9th days. So once that is done, schools are establishing how will students enter and exit the school. There'll be designated areas for each cohort. So when students come to school, they'll know this is where I meet my teacher. This is where my class gathers. And then when the teacher brings the class in, they'll bring them in staggered. When they leave for recess, the teacher will take them out. When they come back in at recess, the same thing at lunchtime. And then after school, that's where they'll end up. All of it will be staggered and all of it will be teacher directed. As you know now, currently in our schools, when the bell goes, children just come in, right? It won't be like that. So that's the first thing. The second thing we've asked schools to organize around are the learning groups or the cohorts. So the government's rule was they like them to be about 60 in elementary school, and we're trying to do a little bit less than 60. So we've said, let's do our cohorts by 2 divisions. And as these will be the children that your children will play with, will interact with, will learn together. If they choose to do that and double up, we wanted them to be age appropriate groupings. So for example, lots of times you would see a grade 7 class being buddied up with a kindergarten or grade 1 class. They do lots of buddy projects together. This is not that kind of cohort. This cohort is, these are my playmates. These are the people I learn with. These are the people, if I'm going to have sports against, I'm going to be playing sports games with people in my cohort. So schools have done that. And then with the cohorts, what they've done, and they're, as I said, they're grade appropriate, age appropriate. What they've done is they have designated areas in the school ground for playtime. So this cohort, they've marked out their school into different zones. This cohort will play in this zone. This cohort will play in this zone. We're trying to keep the cohorts separated as best we possibly can. And then schools have plans around the rotation of these zones. Everybody wants to play on the big toy. Everybody wants to play on in the sandbox or in the field. So we have to rotate them through. So lots and lots of work around that, the learning cohorts and how they'll be organized and designated places for them to play on the playground. The next part of the plan that we ask schools for is how will you use common areas? Everybody's going to go to the library. The libraries are open. So when we go to the library, how will that work? When we go in, hand sanitize. When we leave, hand sanitize. How about the computer lab, the gymnasium, the music room? So some music teachers are going to come to the classroom to do music. Others, where the music rooms are large, the children will come to the music room. Again, hand sanitizer in, hand sanitizer out. One of the other things we've been asked as a question, so we've given some direction upon it in elementary school, is hot lunch is a big deal to us in elementary school. We look forward to those days we can have a hot lunch program. So we're taking direction from the local health officer, Charmaine Dr. Enns, and we've been told that pre-packaged sales are okay as long as we're distributing them, and lots of details around that. So lots of people were concerned about that, so we looked into that. So schools we said, that's not just do the hot lunch right away. but let's think about it, but we can continue with those, which puts smiles on lots of people's faces. In addition to the learning groups, the cohorts, there was a section that we asked people to do that Esther will talk about in a few minutes around students with diverse abilities and disabilities. And then our big part of our plan was communication. We asked schools to communicate with their staffs, their CUPE staff, their CDTA staff. We asked them to communicate with the parents, their PACs, and get questions that the parents had. We also said, go and check out all of your maintenance things. The maintenance has been very busy this summer. Are there any things left undone? This is the time to talk to Ian and his department. In elementary schools, we have September 8th and 9th, as I mentioned, are 2 days dedicated to reviewing the health and safety protocols. So children will not be coming those 2 days. On September the 10th and the 11th, these are partial days. They're in the morning from 8:45 to 11:45, roughly 3 hours in the morning, where half the school will be in attendance each day, where the classroom teacher who say has 28 children, 14 are there. They can take the 14 around. Hey, this is how we go into the music room. This is how we leave the music room. This is where we're going to line up in the morning. Just a little bit of a breakdown, kind of how we do gradual entry for kindergarten, except we're doing gradual entry for everybody because it's a whole new way. We want everyone to feel comfortable. We want everybody, we want to address any anxiety that they have about coming into school and let them know this is safe. Our kindergarten children will start their gradual entry on September the 10th. And they'll be very small groups, maybe 5, 6 children at a time. And that gradual entry will last until the 18th of September, which is the first week and a little bit and the next week. And by the 18th, they'll be in full-time attendance. The number one other thing that we said to parents, or we said to schools, are these are the calls that I've been getting. We just want to know what we do. What are the rules? We're not sure if we want to go back to school. We might decide to do DL through NIDES or homeschool. And if we do, we love our school. We want to go there. We don't want to give up our space. Can we go back? So we've said to schools, we need you to start thinking about that. And then if schools, if tonight, after tonight's motion, if parents are deciding that I'd like to maybe exercise a DL option or a homeschool option, we would ask parents to please contact their school principal and talk to them about that, connect with them, and let's let the principal with the parent explore what some of the options might be. So what we do now, what we have now is I have 16 plans that have been submitted to me. I've gone through them all. The superintendent has gone through them all. The rest of the senior staff have, and schools have submitted their plans, and we feel very confident we're ready to start. And those plans, as Tom said earlier, will be up on the website next week. Now, at this point, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Okay, I've got to change screen, so I'll go with the one I have in front of me. Trustee Howe?
I just had one, it's more of a clarification. I've heard lots of parents talking about the cohort and understanding the cohort, but then if they have multiple children, how big their bubble becomes. Do you want to touch on that a little bit? Is that more for like once there is a case, understanding who's been infected or how, like?
So,
maybe,
just I think I know what you mean because I've had several of those questions too. I had a parent write me and say, I have a child in grade 1, child in grade 4, and a child in grade 6. So if each of them are in a 60 cohort, up to 60, that's 180 different people that are coming into my house. And I said, or could come into my house. And I said to them, you're right, because our cohorts are not organized by family groupings. They're organized by age groupings because we felt very strongly that children would want to play with other people of their own age, or if they wanted to play basketball against each other, they wanted to play grade 7s against grade 7s, that kind of a thing. So they're not arranged by family groupings. And so I said to the father, that is true. What you've observed, that is true. Do you have a follow-up to that though?
Yeah,
Because
wasn't sure. Yeah.
Sorry. So I guess, I guess, so then it's not really a 60-person cohort as far as, like only being exposed to that many people at school. It's more like that's your cohort for like recess and lunch times. And is it more organized that way because if there is a case, then you know who's been exposed and how to sort of contact those families? Is that?
yeah, it's actually more than just recess and lunch. It's your cohort for actually the whole day. Lots of primary classes work together. And so that's the cohort you're coming in direct contact with. And for recess and lunch, playing outside, that's the contact. And really why we wanted to keep it that way is in case there is a case, the contact screening is much easier too, because you know who's in the cohort.
Sure, thank you very much.
Trustee Caton, do you have anything?
Yeah, I do. So basically it is that parents, and we're going to be talking about this tonight, whether or not they send their kids to school, but some parents are going to be sitting on that fence and they're going to wait and they're going to see what the numbers are. And so I'll just phone in sick, or I'll just phone in sick. And you're going on week 1 or week 2, maybe just touch on why, if that may not be a good idea. And the rationale is that phoning in sick every day and just assuming you're not coming, holding that spot is really not, it's not, I guess I'm saying it's probably not the best way to move forward on that, because it leaves a lot of angst, and that those numbers in the school have an impact when we're looking at our school numbers. So I think parents need to be clear that phoning in sick every day to keep their spot there is really not going to be something that they should be considering, and maybe touch on why, if they choose not to come, it's important to let the school know. And if they are coming and they're not coming back at that date, why maybe they need to be more confirmed on that one there.
Thank you, Janice. Well, as I said earlier, our number one concern is health and safety of our children and our staff. So when people don't come in or they phone in, but if they just don't show up, we have to call home and try and find out where they are. The best thing for us to do is, if a parent's not sure, is to phone the principal and have the honest conversation saying, just not feeling comfortable at this time. We're just kind of can we just have a little bit more time? And we're always wanting to work with families around that, rather than just not coming to work or to school, because we're trying to balance classes. We have people wanting to come into that school, and there is a number of factors that we have to do to make our schools work, and having accurate numbers is very important for us. So just phone and say, I'm just not comfortable. I want to wait and see. Can I do that? I think that's the way that we would really appreciate going forward, as opposed to just, oh, Alan's sick. Oh, Alan's sick, you know?
And if I can just jump in quickly, the other side of it is we don't want to have somebody new introduced to the cohort every day or every week for prolonged periods of time. So that's the other side of, as Director Douglas pointed out, the best thing is just to have the honest conversation with the school around, concerns, fears, questions that they may have, and we can work with those families.
Trustee Frowley? Trustee McDonald?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I guess around social distancing within the classes, that is, I know on parents' minds a lot, that with the numbers that we do have that are, full-time kindergarten 20, that the meter space isn't enough, and some districts looking at plexiglass dividers and things for those kids. So there are some very significant issues around that. I'm wondering what plans you're making around the Cumberland and Lake Trail, which have 7 or 8 9s as well, and will they be running with sort of 2 systems then? How's that, just, not details, but the overview on that one seems to be kind of interesting to me. And then is either you or Jeff speaking about the, any specialist teachers and what kinds of plans to have teachers who might normally, I think it said that some of those, but that was in Esther's where psychologists or whatever might be going to more than one site and they'll be responsible for their own proper protocols, but that does increase the number of exposures. And I know that for a lot of parents, it's a length of time with the group. So, full days or full weeks, it's just parents might be willing to take a partial exposure, but not necessarily the full 5 days a week.
Yeah, and just as I said to the previous question, Sheila, what would be great if a parent said, I'm not sure I can come every day, or I'm not sure I can come for 5 hours every day. This is what we're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something we could do? We could certainly have that conversation because we don't want to force fit people. We want to make it a very positive experience coming back to school. Your question about the Lake Trail kids and the Cumberland kids, certainly the older grades will be a little bit different than how we would deal with our primary children and those cohort sizes. And then you mentioned sort of our itinerant teachers who work in more than one place. So in our elementary schools, our teacher librarians our schools aren't large enough to have their own, so they share them. So the idea around that is, again, good hygiene. When the teacher, they don't change schools in the teacher librarians in the same day. So if they're assigned to Royston on Tuesdays, that's where they go. Maybe Wednesday they go to Valley View. But when they're in the school, again, hand washing, hand sanitizing, wearing a mask, and maintaining the appropriate distance with their students. That's how they'll be doing that. When Esther talks about Section 4, she can talk to you about how these speech and language people, the counselors, the the people that come in do the psych ed, she can go through all of that and talk about it, but it's a very similar protocol.
Trustee Hawksby? Trustee White?
I've got a couple of questions, but I think I'm going to wait to listen to the next section and maybe combine a couple. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent?
Great. So what we'll do now, I'll turn it over to our assistant superintendent, Mr. Manning. The secondary one has been a tricky one. It's the one that's probably going to require the most change and lots of flexibility. So I will ask our assistant superintendent to walk us through, again, the high level. And I must stress this, these are the high level directions of the plan. As Director Douglas pointed out, schools will individualize and get down to smaller infinite details around it, and they will post it. The same principle will happen at our secondary schools. This is general, and there will be variations from site to site. What you'll hear tonight from the assistant superintendent is probably a very general approach to the secondary programming. And then, of course, each individual school will have its own nuances and its own details of how they're going to work. So I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Manning.
Thank you, Superintendent DeMayo. So first of all, before I start and get into the plan, I just have to send a huge shout out and a thank you to all the secondary administrators who took a huge chunk out of their summer to coordinate, organize, work together, and try to come up with a plan that makes sense for students in our school district. They've gone above and beyond in all the work that they've put in, and their work's only just starting because they have to submit a restart plan similar to the elementary restart plans. But once they submit their plan, then they have to go into MyEd and change all the timetabling and get that to work. And that is literally days and days of work for them. So just wanted to throw out a huge appreciation to all the work that they've done to make this happen. So as you know, usually in high school, we run a 4-block system and kids get 4 courses, and we've run semestered systems here in our district. And so they have 2 semesters. Well, we're changing that to a quarter system. And in this quarter system, they're going to be reducing from 4 blocks a day in general to 2 blocks a day. Now, in all of Vancouver Island, every single school district on the island is running this same system with the exception of one district, and they're running a 1/8 system, which would see them run one course per day for approximately 20 to 22 days in a row, and then switch to the next course until they run through their series of 8 courses for the year. So we've chosen to look at the quarter system, which is also called a Copernican model. What I should point out is that within this system, because we have 3 very different high schools, and we have a range of between 600 students to almost 1,200 students, depending on what school you're at, there will be differences between the schools, as the superintendent pointed out. So the documentation that you guys have received is in general the overarching big view on what it looks like for all 3 schools in our school district, but there will be some slight variations. So as you know, the ministry has mandated 120 students for a cohort size, and that's a maximum. In our schools, students will attend 2 blocks a day for approximately 8 to 9 weeks. Those blocks will be approximately 2.5 hours each. The times are tentative that you've seen on your schedules. Some schools may choose to do flexible start or a flexible finish, and some schools may choose to have a flexible lunch block to split up their students in cohorts. And schools have different parameters. A school like Vanier, for instance, relies on the busing system for the vast majority of their students. So they're tied into that busing schedule. So their start and end times are not as flexible as the other schools. There will be an AM block and a PM block. The AM or PM block could be split into 2 courses. So you might see at grades 8 to 10 especially, students will get up to 3 courses per quarter. The grade 8 to 10s will all stay in their same cohort. So they will have the same cohort throughout each quarter, whereas the grade 11s and 12s will have a cohort group for their core classes. And then when they move on to elective courses, they will be practicing social distancing in those courses. And the goal in all the cohorts is to keep the cohort size to that 120 students or less. And in any cases where students cannot practice social distancing, masks will be worn, teacher will wear a mask. Esther will talk more about the itinerant teachers, and Alan touched on it a little bit when he talked about the teacher librarians, library clerks, and those types of situations. When this model was put together, the principals were very careful to say, look, we've got to use some guiding principles when we're putting our scheduling together. And the guiding principles were to maintain health and safety, to maintain student choice from March when they originally timetabled, and to keep staff assignments as similar as they possibly could. So they were trying not to blow up the timetable and start completely over. And the quarter system allows us to do this. And the nice thing about the quarter system is if we get back to a stage 1, where we go right back to a full-on schooling, we can move right into our semestered system without much of a glitch at all. If we go to a stage 3, it's very similar because we can offer the same courses, even though it might be on a half-time basis or less basis based on what the parameters of stage 3 would look like. One thing I wanted to point out to trustees as well is all of our schools have had for a number of years ILCs, independent learning centers, and all of our high schools have also done blended learning for several years now. So in a larger school like Vanier, we may be looking at some more blended programs to help facilitate the cohorts and to keep the cohorts at a reduced size. But the nice thing is for us is all of our high schools are fairly adept now at a variety of blended learning programs. So if we have to, or if we need to incorporate that, or it makes educational sense, we can move in that direction. The examples you were given just give you a bit of a flavor. You don't see all the courses on those examples. It was just a sample to show you this is what it could look like for grades 8 to 10 with their cohort groups, and also what it could look like, sorry about that, what it could look like for our grade 11s and 12s in their model. And the grade 11 and 12 model is designed to ensure that grade 12s get the courses they need to graduate. We have a similar priority system in this model as we had in June, where we were looking at making sure grade 12s are able to fulfill their grad requirements first and foremost, and working backwards from there. And if we do have to make some hard, difficult choices with our grade 11s, we have a year's grace to make sure they get their courses in grade 12 that they need. Because the positives to this model are the flexibility in moving between stages and the ability to keep cohort sizes reduced. The negative is it will limit some choice. So there will be some choices that students won't get that they would normally get on a full-on 4-block or regular elective course offerings. When it comes to school startup in the first week back, a couple of things the high schools have decided: they're not going to issue lockers to students. They feel that students right now, they won't have as many books, they won't have as many things, they're only dealing with 2 courses. It might be better just to make sure that they are not congregating around lockers. Grade 8s will come in for an orientation on Thursday morning at all of our secondaries. Grade 9s will come in on Thursday afternoon, and most of the secondaries plan on having their grade 10, 11, 12s come on Friday for their orientations, and all the students will be given a health and safety orientation. And then we go into full-on working mode on Monday of the following week. So that's kind of the big picture look at what we're planning on secondaries.
And of course, moving forward, each individual school will post details of their specific plans on their website as we hit the 26th, and then move on. Again, as we talked about, there are changes. There's going to be changes. There's no questions. And schools are going to continue to work with their staff and their students and parents moving forward to finalize their approach to this. What you heard Assistant Superintendent Manning talk about is a very common approach that's happening across the province, not only on the island. The majority of secondary schools are in some type of quarter revised system. And again, the ability to be flexible, working with students on individual needs. Our schools have done that, and they will continue to do that. As was mentioned with the ILC, working with Navigate. All of our high schools have a great working relationship with those, with Navigate in terms of students coming back and forth, and that'll continue. And we'll continue to have that as an option.
Okay. Trustee Howe, any question?
Thanks so much, Jeff. I did just have one question. Is there, and I know it's sort of individual, so again, I don't want to touch too much on it and hold up any time, but in the village of Cumberland here at CCS, we have the Beaufort building where there's a grade 4 to 9 spread. And so all the common spaces are generally used by that grade configuration. And I'm just wondering if there's a specific separate plan that's being made up for that sort of special situation.
Well, the Cumberland situation is unique, as is Lake Trail, as Trustee McDonald pointed out. So we are treating the grade 8, 9s in Cumberland as a secondary cohort, although they'll be far reduced from the 120 numbers. They'll be more like 70, 75 in their cohort grouping. In terms of specifically changing, where students congregate and meet, that's something that the principal and vice principal of Cumberland are going to be working out, and they'll have a plan for that.
Sure, great. Thanks for that clarification. There was just some questions around that.
Sure.
Trustee Caton?
I got a couple of questions. One is, number of our students in grade 11 and 12 take dual credits. Some of them will take courses at the college. Some go out in the community and do apprenticeships to get their trades, whether in the ASIC programs and that. How are those courses going to be impacted this year for those students? Will they be able to take them, or is there some sort of virtual blended learning that we can accommodate them, is my first question. And the second one is doing class size, and that where you have a cohort size which is too big for the class, for that classroom, or too small, will that be where you look at the blended learning option, where if you have too many kids for, say, a science 12 class or science 11 class, they will be split into maybe some in the classroom, some blended? Like, how will you manage those ones? But I guess my main concern is the ones that take the dual credit programs, you know, the ones at North Island, the ACIT, to go in the community, work at some of the body shops and that for that. So that to me is how we're going to manage that this year.
Sure. Well, your first question, you know, Trustee Caton, it's still a moving goalposts. The goalposts keep moving. The ministry hasn't set any firm direction on where they want to go and how they want to deal with those particular courses yet. And we're just following ministry guidelines at this point, and we'll keep you posted on what that's looking like. Your second question, that's exactly where we would look at blended learning, where we can't facilitate a cohort and where we do have numbers that are too high. And that's where certain schools might be able to use that flexibility to stay within the cohort numbers.
I can tell you, Trustee Caton, that working with the district will continue to work with North Island College around the dual credit. And obviously we have to respect how they're offering their programs. And that will definitely impact how we offer ours. They haven't said that our plan is to continue, but obviously we have to work within the parameters that that institution is running their particular courses. And so that'll continue with our careers department will continue to work with North Island to facilitate the smooth transition and moving forward.
Trustee Frawley?
Yeah, I have a question. So at the high schools, what about physical education classes? Obviously, we have to have right through grade 10 for graduation. So will those still be part of the curriculum at the school? Will you be asking kids to do an online component instead? Is that where kids would, if we are having them, is that where these kids would then have volleyball and basketball versus actual teams through the school year?
We will definitely be offering PE in high school. You know, some of the PE offerings of the past, we may not be able to offer, like we may not be able to throw together a rugby 10, 11, 12 class anymore, but general PE courses are part of the curriculum, and our high schools feel confident that they can run those courses.
And getting students outside is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Trustee McDonald?
Yeah, thanks. I'm certainly a believer in just more generalized fitness literacy and phys ed than the focus on the competitive sports. So that might be a benefit. And then there are so many other things like circus or dance that kids do out of the school as well that they might be able to bring in for credit. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I'm kind of wondering about plans for work experience. Those would be, presumably we'd be wanting to carry on with that, but they would be some protocols or some rules established for our students because they would be going out into some kind of unsupervised public contact.
Yeah, we'd have to follow the guidelines laid out. So if our students were to go to a business in town, obviously that individual would have to follow the guidelines outlined by that business, and whatever if it's in the food industry, obviously all those associated guidelines. We would continue to operate as we have been in terms of the opportunities. It's just going to mean that what they go to may look a little different. They may be experiencing something a little different than they had in the past. But our intent is to continue along those lines with work experience wherever possible.
So I know too that a lot of our senior students do a lot of volunteering, and that's something which is shows up on their applications for bursaries and things like that. That it's part of what they do moving forward. And so I'm thinking that you may have plans for some conversations with them about making sure that they're very mindful and aware of those when they they're doing sports teams and volunteering at hospitals and all kinds of other capacities. So I'm just thinking that that would be a piece of information that you would want to have, because every single one of them then has an expanded network that would be impacting their cohort.
Correct.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think like we are, just as Mr. DeMeo says, we're following probably the same parameters that we followed at the end of the school year, and we managed to get kids through work experience courses last year, and now I think people have a heightened sense of protocols. There's much more health and safety awareness out there, so we would follow the protocols that are established in all those buildings. Many of them are very strict. And so I think we could feel confident moving forward, but we'll be working with our health and safety team, the public health officers, and all the protocols that we establish.
Trustee Hawksby? Trustee White?
Yes, please. Thank you. A couple questions. So my first one is in reference to the secondary learning or secondary school learning with the quarter system or Copernican model. And it might be helpful for parents to be pointed in the direction of a good document on the strengths of that model so that they can better understand it. There's likely some parents in our community who've gone through that system, but there are probably many parents who haven't. And so connecting parents to a guide that we believe is a solid source of that model would, I think, be helpful. And then my second question is more for both elementary and secondary schools. And so what I believe I heard is that if any parent has a question related to their child in a particular school in terms of trying to make a decision or explore an option, or has specific questions, the place that they would go is to contact the school. So my question is somebody there answering the phones now, or how is the best way for them to reach their principal or vice principal, and where is that information available to them if they're new to the area or if the principal or vice principal has changed?
Well, first of all, Tom mentioned the facts that we're developing as a district. So a lot of the questions that the parents are going to be asking probably run through that. But if it's about a registration question or wanting to, get their child into school or speak about programming, they would contact the school principals. We are still collecting online registrations, and really our busiest time is probably the next 2 weeks with those online registrations. And we usually take those to the principals, and then we start working out, do we have room for these students, or what do we need to do to make sure that we have room for the students? So I would say if it's a specific question that a child is already at a school, definitely connect with the principals. They've been in their buildings all week, but starting next week is kind of the official, would have been the official regular starting time for administrators. So they will be in their buildings.
Okay, thanks. I think that answered my question about, who that I've heard this information, I think several times tonight, is there's a lot of places to go for information, but if you can't find the information you're looking for somewhere, please connect with your principal.
That's correct. Good.
Okay, Mr. DeMeo?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manning. So moving on, so students with diverse needs and varying needs, and I'd like to ask our Director of Student Services, Esther Schatz, to speak on this area.
Thank you, Mr. DeMeo. When we consider students with diverse abilities, it's important to recognize that our school district already has procedures and processes that are well established and in place district-wide and in our schools. And that includes case management, school-based team, referral, review processes, the development of IEPs, the development of learning plans, assessment, the processes around assessment, and the review of assessment. So that it's important to know that those protocols and procedures are in place, and those are the ones that we will continue to use. Each student with diverse ability or designation will be assigned a case manager or a principal, vice principal, counselor, classroom teacher contact. That person, we'll call them the case manager, will connect with families to ensure that they are, that the school is aware of their child and or youth, and that each child and youth is welcome to attend school. And we would ask that parents provide an update on their child or family. Case managers will bring students forward at school-based team review meetings to review vulnerability, learning needs, EA support needs, health and safety support need, mental health support need of all students that are in their cohorts. The school district will ask schools to monitor school re-engagement levels of the vulnerable students and families, and will follow processes to connect with those families. It's important for us too to know that the district will continue to provide Pro-D opportunities and resources centered around return to school, trauma-informed practices, strategies for managing fears and anxieties, for fear and anxiety around mask wearing, physical distancing, all as a result of COVID influences. We will also rely on our community partners to help us with those needs. And what I mean by that is to help us with needs around mental health, anxiety issues, depression issues, those kinds of things that we're seeing in our communities. Nursing support services will provide health plans for those students needing them, as well as for training for EAs working with kids who require health plans. Public health nurses will be assigned to each school. Students enrolled in secondary programs like our life skills and prep programs will be programmed to meet their needs within the Copernican timetable and will be integrated into grade cohorts based on their need. Itinerant specialist teachers will adhere to protocols for teachers who are not necessarily members of a cohort. They will follow school entry procedures. They will remain physically distant or, when wearing a mask, working one-to-one. Specialists can work at schools at more than one school per day. Educational assistants will be involved with students from different cohorts. In that case, they will adhere to the protocols for those students who are not members of cohorts. We have implemented additional protocols to outline supports for EAs who do provide close personal care to students who require that, and those protocols are within our guidelines. We'll continue to update the Comox Valley COVID-19 resource guide to ensure that families are aware of supports in the community as well as in the district. And our district website will continue to provide families with additional resources to support students at home to manage anxiety and uncertainty during this time. Any questions from anyone?
Trustee Howe? Any question? Nope. Okay. Trustee Caton, question? Good. Thank you. Trustee Frawley, any questions? Trustee McDonald, any questions? Nope. Trustee Hawksby, any questions? Nope. Trustee Waite, any question?
Oh, you were doing so well.
Whipping along.
You were doing so well, board chair. So my question is regarding immunocompromised students or high-risk students. I'm curious as to what steps a family or parent would take if they have a child that they believe have a medical condition that might not allow them to attend a face-to-face class. What normally happens, or what I guess what would happen now with COVID-19?
We would ask that parents contact their school principal, and together we would work through the guidelines that the Center for Disease Control and the ministry have outlined around immunocompromised children.
Thank you.
Trustee Howe?
And I think I know the answer to this already, Esther, but the same would apply for an immune-compromised student that needed an EA.
Yeah, the family would certainly go to their principal first, and then they would work it out to the best of their ability, and then if they needed to, they would contact district staff.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Superintendent DeMayo, back to you.
Thank you very much. The last formal part of the plan deals with communication, and I really want to take a minute and express our gratitude to our manager of communications, Mary Lee, who has been, and I know many people have probably received notes from her over the past little while regarding information and messaging, and she's been monitoring both our social media accounts and connection with our the various communications in the Valley. So I'd like to ask Mary to talk a little bit about the communications processes that we have engaged in and will continue to engage in moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. DeMayo. Okay, so already tonight you've heard a lot of information, and if you've been following the chat at all on YouTube, you might even be more confused or frustrated or less certain of your decision about your child going back to school, or perhaps you're quite satisfied just knowing that we're here and we're delivering a message and you have something to hear and to digest. But wherever you're at, there's a lot to digest, and I want to remind everybody that the website is our single hub, our central hub, the single repository of information. It's been populated since March with COVID-19 information, and it will continue to be populated. The last post before the school year was out was from the Ministry of Education with a further update on June 25th. And we've resumed populating the COVID-19 page since July 29th, when the new announcement started coming up with the minister. We're all delivering these messages with one thing in mind. We all have the shared value that we want the best education system for all students. And as soon as the resources are made available based on the information that is given to us in the district from the Ministry of Education and the Ministries of Health, we immediately communicate that, sharing it as openly and as transparent as possible, and as accurately and as on time as possible on the website, our single central hub for accurate and timely information. This is completely uncharted territory. This is a new normal. And we're all trying to prevail and navigate through all this information with clear heads amid the fog of war. And that fog of war is the misinformation, it's the noise, it's the assumption, it's the fear, and at times it's the opinions and the insults and the criticism. But we are in a crisis communication for the long haul. We have been since March. So to that end, we will continue to communicate using a myriad of tactics to get the information out to you as accurate as possible, in the hopes that you receive the correct information that is given to us, and the direction and guidelines be given to us. Number one, the web page. Again, this is continue to be our single central hub of information. On the website, we will develop a return to school web page dedicated to this plan, as well as all new information that supports the decisions that are made in this plan, and linking back to government documents that give more of a history and an explanation and a background to the plans and the decisions that have been made. It'll also include the frequently asked questions that we've been compiling up to date and continue to compile tonight, monitoring the chat, seeing some of the information and the concerns are being shared tonight, and the emails that continue to come in. Tonight, we'll compile them into one single robust document. Email updates. The plan will be sent out to our parent community and to all district staff when the plan is approved and made public on the 26th of August. We will use social media, frequently posting on all of our platforms, which include Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we will use this as shout outs to link back to the website, the central hub, the single repository for all our information that's made available to us. And we will continue to monitor the sentiment on social media and garner whether the information is being understood and is being received. And we'll use our analytics to see the click funnel to see that you're actually going to get that information. And right now, the click funnel is showing that the information is not being read. There's very low interest and followers on the social medias that are linking back to our site information. So I really want to encourage you to go back to the webpage, because that in essence is where we're keeping our whole information on the developments of the COVID-19. We are also going to develop fact sheets and infographics to make it very clear and concise in the key areas concerning school ventilation, protocols, cleaner regimens, as well as what to do if a child's sick in the school, among many other things, to make it very simple and very clear so that it's well understood on a single page document, which will also be available on the website. And we will produce video updates with messages from the superintendent and the key senior leadership staff, and post those video updates on the website and use them on social media to drive traffic back to the website. We will be putting out press releases with the new developments, including this plan, and facilitating engagement with the media like we have been so far, going on radio and doing interviews to give an update as we progress through implementing the new plan. And most importantly, we'll continue our stakeholder engagement. This plan is coming together with a collaboration of all of our stakeholder groups as directed by the Minister of Education, but most importantly, because it's important to us, because we're all in this together in this community, and we all are coming from the shared value of giving the best education to our students amid the changing landscape. So I tend to share as much information that's made available to me through our DPAC, and I very much appreciate DPAC is monitoring the social media sentiment as well. And they give me little tips and hints if there's something that's gone awry, where we can have some information cleared up. I don't engage in the social media sentiment, I just monitor it. But if I see a gross misinformation, I will post accurate information, usually which is a link to our website where we keep all the information that's made available to us. So we can, you can anticipate a new banner coming on the web page, which will be a red banner, and it'll just simply say the Restart Program or the Return to School 2020. And that will give a detailed plan description, as you heard tonight, as well as supporting documentation, infographics, and a video. And then as the plan is updated, new information is available to us. We'll continue to populate that page as well as our COVID-19 update page. This concludes my brief, Mr. DeMeo and Chair Hargraves. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Trustee Howe, questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Mary does a fabulous job, as always. And I'm glad that you mentioned DPAC. I wanted to give a little shout out to DPAC. They've been really educating some parents in our community and setting up like the meeting with the doctor on the 25th and doing all kinds of good stuff too. So thanks everybody for keeping us all informed.
Trustee Caton?
No questions, just to acknowledge Mary for her exceptional work and keeping the truth out there. We know over the past month that communication with the ministry has been changing rapidly. It's almost like you're spinning your head because one day they say something and next day something happens. And through Mary's leadership and her and she has kept us informed, she's kept the community informed, and that's the best thing is truthful information is the best way we can move forward. We are not going to have the answers for everything, and it's changing, but I think that just having that truthful message out there and being as honest as we can and saying, you know what, we know what you know, and all we know is change is the constant, is really helpful to parents. It's a very frustrating time, and I'm going to admit it's really frustrating, the unknowns, the uncertainties, and having Mary sharing the information as coming in a truthful manner is helpful. And I'm hoping parents, as we move along, I'm saddened to see that communication is not being read by parents, and I'm not sure what we can do to engage the parental community and that, and maybe something we can work on that one there. But I hope the parents who are online tonight listening, there's 300 of them, would encourage their friends and their neighbors and their parent community to go to our website and find out more information that is truthful and honest. And we're doing the best we can with the information that we have. And tomorrow is probably going to change again. And thank you again, Mary, for all your hard work.
Trustee Frowley?
Yes, as my colleagues have said, thank you so much, Mary. I agree with one of the things that Mary had touched on, which is that misinformation and the negativity that people put out when anyone tries to talk about the subject of COVID. So thank you, because the negativity that feeds out there just creates more angst and more stress among all of us. So having something like this on the website where all of us can go and find that correct information, I think will help so much in the long run, everyone's anxiety and fears and concerns. So thank you.
Trustee McDonald? Okay, Trustee Wait.
Thank you. Fog of War, I'm going to remember that one. It's, yeah, I could have used that a lot of times in the past few months. I appreciate, you know, that we're able to track who's accessing this site. And I think for many families, things have changed so often that they've stopped looking. And even though it seems really close to school startup for many of us, people learn something and then they start to digest it, and then it changes, as Trustee Caton said, and then we have to learn it all over again. And so I understand why some people have maybe stopped looking, but hopefully they'll start looking soon when it looks like things aren't going to hopefully change too much more, or fingers crossed, we hope they won't change too much more. I also appreciate the health and safety plan that our school district has created, that on the document it says this is only accurate on this site. Once you print it, there may have been a revision, and so that isn't the true document is on the website. And in these changing times, I understand how up to date we want our information. My concern is for some of our families who don't have access to the internet on a regular basis. Our public libraries are closed. They don't have access to go places to access a computer to look at our website. And as soon as we print things, they're no longer up to date. And so I'm not sure what the solution is. For the majority of families, they have a mobile device. They can access information on our website, but we do have a component of our families in our community who may not have access. And I guess I'd like to think about how we might be able to support those individuals. And it may be through the school setting, or it may be some other way for them to, again, I don't want to say contact your principal, because there needs to be another way for them to access information. But I do want to commend Mary and the district for the hard work for the information on the website, because it's a mammoth task.
Trustee Hawksby, last word to you. Anything? Very good. Back to you, Mr. DeMayo.
I was talking, but nobody was listening. I would like to just thank the last part of the plan, recognize the DPAC executive, the CDTA, CUPE, our principals, vice principals, our IEC, the Indigenous Education Council, all of which who have contributed to the development and will continue as we work closely together over the next little while, because as was illustrated, things change and they're changing daily, and information changes. When we bring our students back, things will change. We will always be required to work together to make sure we're tweaking those plans going forward. So trustees, I leave you with that's the overarching plan that we would like to submit to the ministry regarding the return. And so would look for acceptance of that. And then the second part would be the direction around the notion of having a student maintain their space at a school should they decide to take the year. So I will turn it over to you, Chair Hargraves, for those last two parts.
Okay, so we need a motion.
I'll move it.
Moved by Trustee Caton that we accept the plan, and seconded by Trustee Crowley.
Yeah.
Thank you. And how would you like me to go about collecting? Just a raise of hands that you're in favor? Or would you like me to go to each trustee separately?
Can you see us all?
I can only see 3 at a time.
Then maybe
So
go to each of us separately if you can't see us all.
Exactly. That's why I was asking. So Trustee Howe, in favor? Yes. Trustee Caton?
Yes.
Trustee Crowley? In
Yes.
favor?
Yes.
Trustee McDonald, in favor?
Well, is there any opportunity to have a discussion about it whatsoever? About whether this is, I mean, I am so appreciative of the work that Tom and his team have done within the mandate that the government gave on this matter of being full return to school and the guidelines. I'm 100% appreciate how much work is done in that, but I did send a bit of a memo out to you, unfortunately very late, but I hope most of you got it, that expressed some reservations about that mandate. Now, that doesn't, the staff obviously were obliged to work within that mandate, but we as a board, I believe, could let the ministry know that they have created a limited range of options, which are, to my mind, which I'd like to be able to discuss with the rest of you, are insufficient to meet the needs of our parents and is also an unnecessary dichotomy, and one which really, to my mind, sets us back in terms of moving towards the way blended learning can support our students. So I'm in a bit of a loss. Like, I will support the plan as it is within the parameters that have been given to our senior management, but I also do want the opportunity for us as a group of trustees to talk about how can we communicate to the ministry about that very mandate itself. And I don't know why, you know, I think we were all expecting something more based on the blended model that would carry forward and then increase the number of students in school, but not a complete back to either or, which has many problems in my mind. So you know, I don't know what to do. I support that plan, but I also think there's a big gap in us being able to talk about what it is and what the task they were given, and whether we as the elected officials feel that this government's guidelines are what we want to see and what we want to put forward for our students.
Well, outside of the timeline that we have been given, Trustee McDonald, in which to put this together, bring it to our various groups to have a chance to consider it, talk about it, have input to it, and then for us to hear it now and move forward. I'm not sure that we have time within even the next 10 minutes to
Well, no, actually, I can see where the time is going, and I can see that we don't, but others, you know, we are aware that other school boards have raised this question. I'm not sure what the dialogue was at BCSTA and what, you know, we did not discuss in July when it came out to say, do we have an opinion about this either or option? And now we're coming along to a place where we are seeing lots of parental input. To me, what I'm hearing is that children want connection to school for sure, but not necessarily this either or. I'm concerned about if many parents opt out, what kind of overload will that put on our DL program? Why are we still having these silos? Our staff are very creative in doing this, but there are just many problems with this. So I'm just, I mean, I'm not happy about having, this was a great presentation received at the very last minute that the mandate has forced us to have a very overview and not consider it. And I see other districts are sending letters to the ministry saying that a continuum of options is what we want, and we need to tell them that the instructions they've given to our senior management are not suitable. Now, I may just be speaking for myself, and all of you are quite happy with it, but from what I've been hearing, today we had a number of letters from parents saying that they want to hold their spot. But on the bigger picture than that, I've been hearing from parents that they don't want to have to choose. Their children want to connect with the school, but not necessarily to be physically present in that building 5 days a week. And I do not see why that cannot happen. And I think we should let the ministry know that.
Well, I would invite you to compose a letter and bring it back to us, and we can submit whatever that's in agreement with the rest of the trustees. That's
okay.
Best I can do at this point. As I say, we need to see that this goes forward to the ministry or not.
So we might be able to do that on a basis of circulating and then a resolution without meeting or something like that, or maybe at a meeting next week.
Well, we're going to have a meeting again next week, because this is going to come right back up as far as the details, et cetera, at that point. So again,
better time for conversation about it. But
yeah, again, because it's a bit different than what we're talking about here now. So
okay, so we're just ticking a box rather than actually as trustees giving our opinion on whether this is a plan that meets our parents.
No, it's you're giving an opinion even now. So it's being done, but I'm not sure. Again, now we're down to less than 10 minutes to be able to do it, because.
Yeah. Okay. And all of the information presented to us was very valuable. I have no regrets about any of that. Okay. But I do feel that we have an obligation to share our views with each other about whether this is the best framework, and I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Trustee Waite? Yes or no?
Well, not quite that simple.
Okay.
I guess first I want to say that the information that we're discussing tonight and the things that we're doing are, I believe we all would say, are critically important to our families, the students in our community, and everybody in our school district. And so if we need to go past 9 o'clock to appropriately make the decisions that we need to make, given the timeline constraints we have, I would like to hope that that we could all find a place to be willing to do that. Because there's been time mentioned a couple of times.
Yes,
in the
and I
past
will
few
tell you
minutes.
now, I will not take it past 9 o'clock. We will return for another meeting tomorrow if necessary.
Well, that might be disappointing to folks who are watching.
Yeah.
But you are entitled to your vote. And so back to the question.
It has to be unanimous.
I understand that, Board Chair. So back to the question, based on the information that I've received today in the high level pathways that have been presented to us, always hoping for more options, but at this point, with what I've received, I support this.
Thank you very much. Trustee Hawksby. Thank you. Yes? Good. And with that, it passes. Next, the motion. And I have it written here. Would you like me to read it, Trustee Caton?
Oh, I like to read it, please, Chair Hargraves.
Please do.
Okay, so the motion is, and hope everybody can hear me, and if someone can put it up on the screen so other members of the community know what we're doing, it'd be helpful. I'm not sure we can do that. That the Board of Education respect the decision of families and students who decide they cannot attend their neighborhood school or programs of choice for the 2021 school year due to the unprecedented global pandemic COVID-19 crisis that is currently impacting our world today, and that their spots will be held for them when they do return back to their neighborhood school or programs of choice for the 2021-22 school year. I move that motion.
Seconder, Trustee Howe?
Yeah.
Would you like to speak to the motion, Trustee Caton?
Well, I had a lot to speak to, but I'm in the conscious of time. I'm going to be very simple. We don't know what's going to happen in the next month, the month after, or next year. But the one thing we can do as the board is to ease some of the concerns and the stress and anxiety that our parents and our community are feeling with respect to how to deal with the students. This pandemic has affected our community in various ways. Parents want to know if they stay home with their kids for whatever reason, those kids can go back to their neighborhood school, their classrooms and peers. And as a board, we're limited to what we can do, but we can ensure our families and our parents and our communities that that's the one thing that we can say and give them some sense of stability, is that when it's safe to go back to school, there's a spot for you in your neighborhood school with your friends and peers as you move forward.
Thank you. Trustee Howe, would you like to speak for or against?
I'd like to speak for this motion. I agree that if parents decide that they want to put their students or their children in a DL program, that their spot should be saved for them the following year. But I also want to, thanks to Tom and the team. I appreciated the clarification for the parents who really do want their kids to come back to school. That if they want to just talk to us about it or talk to their principal about it, that we're going to support students and parents in any way that we can when they are coming back to school, and how flexible you guys are being. So I'm in favor of the motion. Thank you. Trustee
Farrelly, would you like to speak for or against?
Just a quick, I know it has been out there that any new kids coming into the district may possibly not resume their position if they were taking the spot of one who chose to go to DL. I do support all of our students having the choice during what we're going through and being able to go back to their catchment school. But I won't support having new people in the district being tossed out of a spot when we are looking out for all students in our district, whether they've been here for 2 days, 2 years, 20 years. So I will support the motion. However, just keeping in mind that we will do whatever we need to do for all the students.
And to clarify, my motion stayed away from that absolutely completely. It's dealing with exactly those students, and we can deal with that another time. It's nothing to do with incoming students. It's about our current students. Hope that clarifies that.
Thank you.
Trustee McDonald, would you like to speak for or against the motion?
Well, I do support this motion in the very limited focus that it has. And I would look forward to having a larger conversation about the other ways that we could be doing this, that our staff could be developing a plan that would make it more or less unnecessary. And that we as a board might consider communicating that to the ministry. So hopefully we'll be able to do that over the next week or so.
Okay. Trustee Waite, would you like to speak for or against?
I was hoping to have Superintendent DeMayo provide more information. At the beginning of the meeting, he did indicate that he was recommending this. So I appreciate that. It would have been nice if we'd had more time to learn a little bit more about how would we operationalize this. But in the essence of time, I will just indicate my support and look forward to further conversation about how we could operationalize this.
Sounds good.
Okay, Trustee Hawksby, would you like to speak for or against it? I'm for the motion. Very good. Okay, so having heard, did you want to say or add anything to that, Tom, just as far as what was said?
No, I thank you very much for that motion. And
yeah, we need to vote on it.
Oh, yes, sorry, my apologies.
Okay, so at this point, Trustee Howe, Trustee Caton, Trustee Frowley, are you in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee McDonald, Trustee Waite, Trustee Hawksby, are you in favor?
Yes, I am.
Good. Then the motion passes unanimously. The rest of the agenda is pretty straightforward things. Did you want to close or anything else on that one, Trustee Caton?
Just thank you everybody for that, and just follow up to what Trustee McDonald was saying, and she brings some very valid concerns, because this motion does have some implications that we don't have time to have a conversation about. So I think we need to meet together as a board, whether it's committee of the whole meeting, where it's informal, to continue the dialogue of this, the implications, and also to address some of the concerns that Trustee McDonald brought forward tonight that we definitely need to have the conversation around. But thank you all again. I really appreciate the support tonight.
Excellent. I would refer people to the correspondence that we have received as points of information and gotten back. The questions to the public, any questions that you have, all of the questions that you have, please either check for the information on our website or forward the questions to us so that we can put them together and compile them. Senior staff will be looking at them all for the next days and putting together a F&Q on the website. And that's where the information will be. So questions will come at this from this one, I'm sure, and go forward to our website. Having said that, I look for a motion to adjourn. So moved by Trustee Frowley, seconded by Trustee Howe. And with that, good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.